What if a 5,200-kilogram beast suddenly crossed your path in the frozen wilderness? Picture a hulking silhouette emerging through whirling snow, an animal as heavy as an elephant plodding towards you under the ghostly Arctic moonlight. In Yakutia, the coldest inhabited region on Earth, this isn't a fantasy or nightmare scenario, but the start of an extraordinary true story. In the dead of a Yakutian winter, with temperatures plummeting to a brutal -72 degrees Celsius, an isolated village encounters this gigantic creature. This monstrous animal becomes the community's lifeline, providing vital sustenance and hope when blizzards have cut them off from the world. How did a single beast feed an entire village? And what ancient survival secrets helped these people endure nature's harshest trials? The answers lie in a breathtaking tale of resilience on the Siberian frontier. In this video, a dramatic journey of survival, culture, and communal strength unfolds. You'll discover how an entire village united to overcome the relentless cold, guided by centuries-old traditions and an unbreakable community spirit. From the heart of the storm to the warmth of a communal feast, we explore how humanity and hope can thrive in one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. Prepare to witness a story of survival against all odds, where nature's fury meets human courage in the icy realm of Yakutia. Winter descends on Yakutia like an all-encompassing force. By November, the sun barely creeps above the horizon, offering only a few hours of dim light before sinking into polar night. The mercury stays far below zero even at midday. By December, temperatures of -50 degrees Celsius are commonplace, and storms can whip up blinding walls of snow. In these months, the world is monochrome. Black spruce forests laden with powder, white snowfields stretching to the horizon, and the pale blue twilight of noon. The very air seems to crackle with cold. In one such winter, locals still recall it as one of the cruelest in memory, the thermometer hovered around -60 degrees Celsius for weeks on end, threatening to break Oymyakon's all-time record of -71.2 degrees Celsius. In this extreme cold, axle grease in trucks hardened like wax, and water pipes froze solid in hours. Deliveries of supplies from the outside world grew infrequent. Planes could not land, and roads became impassable sheets of ice. The village stood isolated in an ocean of snow and permafrost. Inside their simple wooden houses, villagers huddled around wood stoves for warmth. Firewood is life here, as essential as the air, and families burn through over 100 cubic meters of logs each winter to heat their homes. They insulate windows with layers of fur and cloth, and many houses still rely on outhouses because plumbing will freeze and burst in the permafrost ground. In the mornings, people venture out bundled in reindeer skin parkas, fur hats, and thick felt boots called valenki. Even brief chores, fetching water from the ice-crusted river or feeding the cattle, can be perilous. Eyebrows and beards turn white with frost, and breathing the frigid air aches in the lungs. This is a land where simply existing requires heroic effort. It is in these desperate conditions that food becomes salvation. Through autumn, the villagers had been stockpiling what food they could: salted fish from the summer catch, smoked reindeer meat, and sides of horse meat frozen as hard as oak. In Yakutia, the soil itself becomes a natural freezer. Many families have ice cellars dug beneath the permafrost, where they stash fish and meat gathered during the warmer seasons. Come winter, those frozen stores are a lifeline, ensuring access to black food, traditional meat and fish, year-round. But that winter, the stores were running low. The rivers had frozen early, cutting short the autumn fishing season, and a summer drought had thinned the herds of reindeer. By January, with fierce blizzards howling outside and supply trucks weeks overdue, hunger began to stalk the village. In this crisis, the community elders gathered to discuss a plan. At the center of the village's small cattle corral stood a truly gigantic bull, a creature unlike any they had seen before. This bull was the pride of the village's herd, a beast of incredible size and strength, born of a hardy Yakutian cow, but sired by a larger southern breed. Over the years, thanks to abundant summer grazing and the collective care of many families, he had grown to astonishing bulk. Villagers marveled that he weighed more than 5 tons, as heavy as a small elephant. His shaggy coat was nearly a foot thick with insulation, and when he exhaled, great plumes of steam billowed in the icy air. Children had nicknamed him Khaan, after a legendary giant of Yakut folklore. Khaan the bull had been kept alive through several winters due to his breeding value and the respect he commanded. But now, the village faced a dire choice. Sacrificing this mighty animal could provide enough meat to sustain every family until spring. It was a heartbreaking prospect. Khaan was a living symbol of the village's perseverance, but the alternative was to risk starvation if the winter dragged on. After much deliberation under the eerie green glow of the aurora borealis, the decision was made. The great bull would be slaughtered for the good of all. It would be an event both somber and momentous, a communal act of survival steeped in tradition and ritual respect for the life that would be taken. On the morning chosen for the slaughter, the temperature hovered around -45 degrees Celsius. The sky was clear and brittle, the dawn casting a brief pink hue on the endless snow. The entire village assembled in the yard, where the bull Khaan stood in quiet dignity. There was an atmosphere of reverence and gravity. Such a sacrifice was not made lightly. Many here were descendants of indigenous Saka herders and Evenki hunters, and they followed ancient customs to honor the animal's spirit. An elder, the village headman, approached the bull and gently sprinkled a few drops of fermented mare's milk onto the snow, an offering to the spirits of the land. In Yakut, spiritual belief, the earth and cold are alive with spirits, and one must give thanks when taking a life for sustenance. The villagers murmured prayers in Saka language, asking forgiveness from Buga, the guardian spirit of nature, and thanking the bull for the nourishment it would provide. According to tradition, no part of a slaughtered animal should be wasted, and its gift should be shared by all. The Yakut people, like their Evenki neighbors, have long observed a practice known as nimat, a ceremonial distribution of the spoils of a hunt or slaughter equally throughout the community. As one ethnographer described, when a hunter kills an animal, he should announce it to the camp. Then a portion is set aside for every family, even the poorest, so that all share in the bounty. Offending this custom by hoarding meat or refusing to share was traditionally believed to anger the spirits and bring misfortune. These ancient rules of sharing and reciprocity still live on in Yakutia's remote villages, where cooperation is the key to endurance. Men with fur-lined hats and women in long quilted coats gathered around Khaan to perform the slaughter with solemn respect. The village's most skilled butcher, a man who had learned the art from his father and grandfather, led the effort. With swift, humane precision, they ended the bull's life, murmuring "Urkuyu," a word of thanks as it fell. Immediately, the community swung into action. Knives flashed in the weak daylight as they began butchering the massive carcass. In the extreme cold, steam rose from the bull's body, and blood quickly congealed, dark and glossy against the snow. Some of the blood was collected in buckets. It would be used to make traditional blood sausage and a dish called Khaan, frozen blood slices that are considered a delicacy when dipped in salt. The internal organs were carefully removed and set aside. The liver, rich in nutrients, would be eaten raw in thin frozen slices by the elders, as was custom, to impart strength. Thick layers of yellow-white fat were peeled off, highly valued for cooking and for fueling oil lamps in winter. Even the bones would be cracked for marrow, or saved to simmer into hearty broths. Nothing would go to waste. Despite the grim work, there was an undercurrent of relief, even gratitude, among the villagers. This one act meant full bellies in the coming weeks. As they labored, the oldest women started a small fire in a barrel and heated a gigantic cast-iron cauldron of soup. They threw in chunks of fresh meat, potatoes, and wild herbs gathered in summer. Before long, the yard was filled with the rich aroma of boiling meat stew that cut through the cold. Families brought out loaves of dense rye bread and passed around hot tea and even a bit of vodka in celebration. It was a somber day, but also a day of plenty, and that was cause for some celebration. One by one, equal shares of meat were apportioned to each household in accordance with nimat. They laid out huge cuts, ribs, legs, shoulders, on clean tarps in the snow. In total, the bull's dressed meat weighed literally thousands of kilograms. There was enough to give every family dozens of kilos of beef. The largest share was symbolically given to the poorest family in the village. As tradition dictated, the neediest are served first. The family of the butcher, who had done the work, humbly took a share equal to everyone else's. In this village, no one person's greed would outweigh another's need. A code of honor that had sustained them from generation to generation. With the bull fully butchered and divided, the villagers turned to the task of preserving the meat. In Yakutia's deep freeze, nature provides the perfect refrigerator. Huge cuts of raw meat were hung on outdoor racks or placed in shed attics. Within hours, the frigid air had chilled them to the core. Some families carried their portions down into permafrost ice cellars carved below their log houses. These ice cellars are ingenious village freezers. Underground caves dug into permanently frozen soil that keep food frozen solid throughout the year. Inside them, the temperature stays well below 0 degrees Celsius even in summer. Villagers stack meat and fish from floor to ceiling, ensuring a stable supply of food for the long haul. Thanks to this bull, those cellars would now be abundantly stocked. People smiled at the sight of their larders filled with meat. No one would go hungry this winter. As evening fell, the community came together for a village feast to honor Khan's sacrifice. They gathered in the largest house, crowding around a long wooden table by the warmth of a crackling stove. Kerosene lamps and candles cast flickering light on faces ruddy from the cold. The fresh stew simmering in the cauldron was ladled out to all. A nourishing broth packed with tender beef, root vegetables, and noodles. Platters of frozen sliced meat and fish, known as stroganina, were passed around. Each thin slice, cut from the half-frozen flesh of today's kill or from Arctic river fish, was dipped in salt and melted on the tongue with a sublime freshness. There were boiled dumplings filled with minced meat, and rich blood sausages made from the bull's blood and barley, delicacies that tasted of iron and smoke. The women had even churned some of the bull's cream into butter to spread on bread, and fermented a batch of kumis, mare's milk, saved from summer, so each adult could have a small cup to toast with. Laughter and the sound of stories in the Saka language filled the room. Outside, the wind howled and the temperature kept dropping. But inside there was warmth. Not just the warmth of the stove, but the warmth of human kinship and gratitude. That night, the northern lights shimmered green and purple across the starry sky, nature's own silent celebration above the sleeping village. Full and content, the villagers crawled into their thick blankets. Some gave thanks in whispered prayers to Ulutoyon, the Lord of the Sky, or to Jesus, for many are also Russian Orthodox by faith, and to the spirit of the noble bull that would see their children fed until the spring. In the distance, wolves howled on the edge of the dark forest, drawn by the scent of blood. But the villagers were not afraid. Well-fed and united, they would keep watch through the night, rifles at the ready to scare off any predators from the precious stores of meat. The howling eventually faded into the endless night. Over the following weeks, life in the village returned to its steady rhythm of survival, made easier by the bounty of Khan's meat. Each morning, families would shave off pieces of the frozen beef with an axe or saw, then simmer them into nourishing stews or fry them with potatoes, high-calorie meals to fuel the constant battle against the cold. Children who normally might complain of hunger went to bed with full bellies. Elders, who often suffer the most in winter, regained strength with every bowl of hot soup. Every bite was a reminder of the bull's gift and the community's collective effort. Fish and meat, the black food that Yakuts deem essential for life, were now in ample supply, and that meant peace of mind. As one local proverb goes, if you have meat and fish, you can survive anything. In this way, the village persisted through the coldest of cold spells, its people weathering blizzards and 20-hour nights with resilience, born of mutual trust. The story of the 5,200-kilogram bull that fed an entire village quickly became local legend. In the evenings, grandparents would retell it to wide-eyed grandchildren around the stove, how their community came together, how the great beast gave life to the village in the winter of -72 degrees Celsius, and how it proved the strength of their bonds. The tale is both dramatic and instructive, reinforcing a core cultural lesson. One person's fortune must benefit all. In Yakutia's traditional society, sharing food is a sacred duty, a means of survival, and a source of spiritual merit. Anthropologists who visit Arctic communities note that such sharing networks are the backbone of resilience in the north. Indeed, locals say, we cannot live without mutual support because the environment leaves no other choice. The successful feeding of the whole village through communal effort became a proud example of this ethos. It showed the younger generation that even in the modern era, with all its snowmobiles and satellite phones, their ancient values still hold the key to survival. Historically, the Saka, Yakut people, have always lived by collective effort. Horse and cattle herders by tradition, they would band together during hard times, sharing herds, pasture, and food. In winters past, when a hunter brought down a wild reindeer or a huge elk, the norm was to distribute the meat so that no family went without, a practice enforced not by law, but by cultural honor. That spirit persisted through centuries of hardship, from the days of Mongol invasions to the Soviet era, and lives on in remote villages like this. Even today, in the 21st century, when a successful hunt or slaughter occurs, many Yakutian villagers quietly continue to practice naimat, giving out portions of fish or game to neighbors and relatives as an unwritten rule of life. It is a remarkable system where generosity is a form of insurance. By helping others, you ensure that when you are in need, others will help you. The winter that Khaan the bull fed the village eventually gave way to spring. By March, the sun began to return, creeping higher each day and melting the edges of the snow. The worst of the cold was past. Thanks to the bull's sacrifice, every single villager had made it through the perilous season. When the first thaw came, they held a small ceremony on the spot where the great beast had been slaughtered. The villagers gathered and lit a fire on the remaining clean bones of the bull, a traditional act to send its spirit upward. They spoke words of gratitude and sprinkled fermented milk into the flames, a final offering of thanks. There was sadness, but also pride. They had survived one of the cruelest winters on record as a community, upholding the legacy of their ancestors. The story of this 5,200-kilogram beast and the village it sustained is more than just a dramatic survival tale. It is a testament to the power of community, culture, and cooperation in the most inhospitable of environments. In Yakutia, nature's challenges are immense. The cold can kill, the isolation can break the spirit, but the Yakut people have shown that together they can endure nearly anything. By pooling their resources, sharing their food, and honoring the animals that nourish them, they transform a frozen hardship into a manageable life. As one Arctic researcher observed, fish and meat are not just food here. They symbolize support networks and social bonds. The communal feast from one bull strengthened those bonds immeasurably. Today, Yakutia is changing. Young people move to cities. Climate change alters the patterns of ice and wildlife, and outside influences seep in. Yet, in the coldest villages, the old ways persist. Each winter, as the darkness settles and the mercury dives, there will be a moment when neighbors knock on each other's doors to gift a cut of meat or a string of fish. There will be communal hunts and shared meals, and perhaps another giant bull or bison will be sacrificed so that all may eat. These acts carry echoes of ancient survival wisdom. They remind everyone that in a land where one person alone could never subsist, a village united can overcome the impossible. In the end, the tale of the bull that fed a village is a tale of hope and humanity in a land of extreme despair. It paints a vivid picture, a frozen village at -72 degrees Celsius, lit from within by the glow of fires and the warmth of fellowship, defying the Lord of the Cold outside. The dramatic sacrifice of one enormous creature ensured the survival of dozens of families, a powerful narrative of life triumphing over deathly cold. And as the faceless narrator of this story, we step back and observe the final scene. The long polar night is ending. Dawn light glitters on the snow. From each chimney, smoke rises straight into the still, frigid air. The villagers of Yakutia emerge from their homes, alive and resilient, ready to greet another day in the coldest place on Earth. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe to our channel, and stick around for more journeys into the coldest, toughest, and most fascinating places on Earth.